On March 21, 2024, Dubai police discovered the body of 21-year-old Indian student Amina Paraman in a private mansion in the Al Barsha district. Her husband, 53-year-old businessman Mansoor bin Hamad Al Mazroui, claimed it was an accident, but marks on the girl's neck suggested otherwise. Amina Paramanan was born and raised in a small town in the state of Kerala in southern India. Her family was not wealthy, but her parents tried to give their daughter an education. The girl was in her third year at a local college, studying business administration. According to her classmates, Amina was a quiet, modest student who rarely participated in social events and spent most of her time studying. She had no close friends, did not attend parties, and hardly used social media. Her Instagram profile contained only a few photos from family celebrations. Amina's parents, like many conservative Indian families, held traditional views on marriage. When the girl turned 20, her mother began actively looking for a suitable husband for her. At first, local candidates from their community were considered, but most families refused because of the modest dowry that Amina's parents could offer. The girl's father worked as a clerk in a government agency, and his salary barely covered the living expenses of the family of 5. Amina had 2 younger sisters who were also about to get married. In December 2023, Amina's mother contacted a marriage agency in a neighboring town. The agency specialized in international marriages, mainly with grooms from the Persian Gulf countries. The agency's owner, Rashid Hussain, had been working in this field for 15 years and had connections with several similar agencies in the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. The process was simple. Indian families provided photographs and basic information about their daughters, and the agency passed this information on to partners in Arab countries, where it was shown to potential grooms. Rashid Hussain met with Amina's mother in his office on the 3rd floor of an old building in the city center. The office was small, with a few chairs for visitors and a desk piled high with folders of documents. On the walls hung photographs of happy couples in front of expensive cars and large houses. Hussain explained the procedure. They had to provide photos of the girl, copies of her documents, a medical certificate, and consent to the marriage. The agency's services cost 50,000 rupees, which was a significant amount for Amina's family. However, Hussain promised that if the marriage took place, the groom would usually cover all the expenses and provide a generous dowry. 2 weeks later, Hussain called Amina's mother and said he had found a suitable candidate. Mansoor bin Hamad Al Mazroui, a businessman from Dubai, was looking for a young, educated bride from India. Hussain showed a photo of a middle-aged man in traditional white clothing standing next to a black SUV. He said that Mansoor owned several hotels in Dubai and a transport company involved in logistics. The man was divorced and had 2 adult children from his first marriage. Now he wanted to remarry a young woman who could run the household and bear him more children. When Amina's parents learned of the groom's age, they were initially skeptical. The 32-year age difference seemed too great. But Hussain convinced them that such marriages were common in Arab countries and that Mansoor would be able to provide Amina with a comfortable life that they could never give her. He also mentioned that Mansoor was willing to pay a dowry of $20,000 and cover all the wedding expenses. This money could help the family marry off their 2 younger daughters. Her parents showed Amina the photo. The girl silently looked at the image of an unfamiliar elderly man. She said nothing, only nodded. In their family, it was not customary to argue with their parents' decisions. Her mother took this as consent. In January 2024, the process of preparing the documents began. Hussain regularly contacted the partner agency in Dubai that represented Mansoor's interests. Both sides exchanged requirements and conditions. Through the agency, Mansoor sent a list of requirements for his bride. She must be under 25 years of age, educated, a virgin, with no criminal record or serious illnesses. The last requirement was particularly important to him, and the agency emphasized this several times. Amina underwent a medical examination at a private clinic recommended by the agency. The doctor issued a health certificate stating that the girl was healthy and fit for marriage. The certificate also included a note about her virginity, although the examination itself was superficial and formal. The doctor spent no more than 10 minutes with Amina, asked a few general questions about her health, and wrote the certificate. Later, the investigation would establish that this clinic regularly collaborated with Hussein's marriage agency and issued similar certificates without thorough examination. In February, Mansour sent an official marriage proposal through the agency. The document was written in Arabic with an English translation. It listed the terms of the marriage, the size of the dowry, and the obligations of both parties. According to the document, after the marriage, Amina was to move to Dubai and live in her husband's house. She was forbidden to work without his permission. She was obliged to run the household and obey her husband's will in accordance with Islamic traditions. In exchange, Mansour undertook to provide for her financially, provide housing, and pay all living expenses. Amina's parents signed the document without going into details. The main thing for them was that their daughter would be provided for and able to live in Dubai, where, in their opinion, everything was better than in their poor neighborhood in Kerala. They did not think about how a 21-year-old girl who had never left her state would feel in a foreign country with an unfamiliar man who was old enough to be her father. After signing the preliminary agreement, the visa application process began. Mansour used his connections to arrange a bride visa for Amina. The process took about 3 weeks. During this time, the girl continued to attend college classes, but became even more withdrawn. Her classmates later recalled that in the last weeks before her departure, Amina often sat alone in the corner of the classroom, staring out the window and hardly talking to anyone. When asked what was wrong, she replied that everything was fine. On March 7th, Amina received her passport with a visa. A ticket for a flight to Dubai was purchased for March 10th. The girl had only 3 days left to pack her things and say goodbye to her familiar life. Her mother helped her pack her suitcase. They bought several new dresses, underwear, and cosmetics. Her father gave Amina a small amount of money that he had saved especially for her. Her younger sisters cried and hugged their older sister, not fully understanding that she was leaving forever. On the evening of March 9th, relatives gathered at the house. Aunts, uncles, cousins came. They had a small farewell dinner. The guests congratulated her parents, saying that Amina was lucky to be marrying a rich man and living in Dubai. Some of the female relatives whispered among themselves, discussing the large age difference, but no one voiced their doubts aloud. In the cultural environment in which Amina grew up, a woman's fate was determined by her parents' decision, and her opinion was rarely taken into account. On the morning of March 10th, her father drove Amina to the airport. The drive took about 2 hours. They hardly spoke. Her father tried to say something several times but stopped mid-sentence. At the terminal, he hugged his daughter, wished her happiness, and quickly left without looking back. Later, he admitted to investigators that he felt guilty but could not have done otherwise. For him, it was the only way to secure his daughter's future and help the whole family. Amina checked in, dropped off her luggage, and headed for the boarding gate. The flight to Dubai lasted about 3.5 hours. The girl sat by the window, looked at the clouds, and did not touch the food offered by the flight attendants. A passenger sitting next to her later said that she looked scared and nervous, took out her phone several times, looked at photos, but did not call anyone. The plane landed at Dubai International Airport at around 8 p.m. local time. Amina passed through passport control, collected her luggage, and exited into the arrivals hall. She had never been to such a large airport before. Everything around her seemed huge, noisy, and frightening. She looked for the sign with her name on it, as the agency had instructed her. A few minutes later, a man in traditional white clothing approached her. It was not Mansour, but his driver, whom he had sent to meet his bride. The driver took her suitcase and gestured for her to follow him. They went out to the parking lot, where a black SUV with tinted windows was waiting. The driver opened the back door, and Amina got in. The car was large, with leather seats and the air conditioning running at full power. The girl was shivering, even though the interior was cool. The driver did not speak English, but silently drove through the evening streets of Dubai. Amina looked out the window at the skyscrapers lit up by neon lights and the wide highways filled with expensive cars. It was all so far from her quiet town in Kerala. 40 minutes later, the car turned into a private neighborhood with large villas behind high fences. The driver stopped at the gate of one of the houses, pressed a button on the remote control, and the gate slowly opened. Amina saw a two-story mansion with a white facade, large windows, and a well-kept garden. Mansour bin Hamad al-Mazrouei himself was standing near the entrance. Mansour looked older than in the photographs. His face was lined with deep wrinkles. His beard was streaked with gray, and his eyes were cold and appraising. He stood motionless, his hands clasped behind his back, and looked at the girl as a buyer appraises merchandise. Amina got out of the car, lowered her eyes, and greeted him quietly in broken English. Mansour did not reply, but nodded to the driver, who carried the suitcase into the house. Then he turned and went inside without waiting for the bride. Amina hesitantly followed him. Inside, the house was even more impressive. Marble floors, high ceilings, a large chandelier in the hall, a wide staircase leading to the second floor. Everything was impeccably clean and tidy, but completely lifeless. No family photos on the walls, no personal belongings, no signs that anyone lived here. The house resembled an exhibition hall of expensive furniture. Mansour led Amina to the second floor and showed her the room. It was a large bedroom with a huge bed, a separate bathroom, and a dressing room. He briefly explained in English where everything was, said that tomorrow morning the maid would show her the rest of the house, and left, closing the door behind him. Amina was left alone in a strange room, in a strange house, in a strange country. She sat down on the edge of the bed and took out her phone. Several missed calls from her mother. The girl dialed the number, but no one answered. Due to the time difference, her parents were already asleep. She wrote a short message. "I've arrived. Everything is fine. I'll write tomorrow." Amina hardly slept that night. She lay on the huge bed, listening to unfamiliar sounds, trying to get used to the idea that this was now her life. Somewhere downstairs, she could hear footsteps, the sound of the TV. Then everything fell silent. Mansour didn't come to her room. The girl did not know whether to be happy about this or not. In the morning, the maid knocked on the door. Maria, a 45-year-old Filipina, had been working in Mansour's house for 7 years. She spoke English with a strong accent, but it was understandable enough. Maria showed Amina around the house, showing her the kitchen, living room, dining room, and master's study. She explained that she did the cooking and that Amina didn't need to do anything. Mansour usually left for work in the morning and returned in the evening. The house also had a room for the security guard, who worked shifts with his partner. Their main task was to watch over the property and the gates. Maria showed Amina the house rules. She was not allowed to enter the master's study without permission. She was not allowed to open the gates on her own. All purchases and trips outside the house required the master's permission. Maria said this in a calm tone, as if she were listing ordinary household rules. For her, having worked in Arab families for many years, such rules were the norm. Amina spent the first few days mainly in her room or in the garden. Mansour hardly spoke to her. In the morning he left for work, returned in the evening, dined alone in the dining room, watched TV, and went to his room. Sometimes he asked Amina short questions: how she was feeling, if she needed anything, if she was getting used to the heat. The girl answered in monosyllables, trying not to look him in the eye. She felt awkward and scared to be around this silent stranger who was now considered her husband. The wedding was set for March 11th, the day after Amina's arrival. Mansour wanted to hold the ceremony quickly and without unnecessary fuss. He did not arrange a big celebration, as is often done in Arab families. Only the bare minimum, an official marriage ceremony according to Sharia law in a mosque, in the presence of witnesses and a representative of the imam. On the morning of March 11th, a representative of a marriage agency from India arrived at the house, having flown in especially for the ceremony. He was accompanied by a translator, a middle-aged woman who was supposed to help Amina understand what was happening. Mansour's 2 brothers with their wives and his adult son from his first marriage also arrived. A total of 10 people gathered. Amina was given a traditional Indian wedding dress to wear, which her parents had sent her. It was a red sari with gold embroidery and jewelry that her mother had given her. The girl got dressed in her room with Maria's help. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she hardly recognized her own reflection. She looked like a bride from the Indian movies she had watched as a child. Only in those movies, the brides were always happy. Around noon, everyone went to the mosque. It was a small mosque in the Al-Barsha district, not the most famous or visited. Mansour had deliberately chosen a quiet place where there would be no unnecessary witnesses or curious onlookers. The ceremony was quick and formal. The imam read the prayers, asked the mandatory questions, and Amina and Mansour confirmed their consent to the marriage. The girl repeated the words after the interpreter, not fully understanding their meaning. The whole process took less than half an hour. After the ceremony, a small lunch was served at the house. The guests congratulated the newlyweds, wishing them happiness and many children. Mansour's brothers' wives looked at their new sister-in-law with curiosity, whispering to each other in Arabic. Amina sat quietly, barely touching her food, answering questions with nods. Mansour's son, a 25-year-old man, did not speak at all to his stepmother, who was younger than him. He sat through the entire lunch with a gloomy expression, clearly unhappy with his father's decision to remarry. By evening, the guests had left. The house was quiet again. Maria cleared the table, washed the dishes, and went to her room. The security guard took over the night shift. Amina went up to her bedroom, changed into simple home clothes, and sat down by the window. It was getting dark outside, and lights were coming on in the windows of the neighboring houses. Somewhere out there, other people were living their lives, with their own problems and joys. And she was here, locked in a golden cage, not knowing what would happen next. Around 10 o'clock in the evening, Mansour knocked on the door. Amina started in surprise and opened the door. He stood on the threshold in his home clothes, looking at her with a long, appraising gaze. Then he asked if she was ready to fulfill her marital duties. His voice was even, emotionless, as if he were asking if she wanted tea. Amina didn't know how to respond. She remained silent, her eyes downcast. Mansour took this as consent. What happened next, Amina would later recall as the most terrifying experience of her life. Mansour behaved rudely and demanding. He was not physically cruel, but his coldness and indifference to the girl's feelings were worse than any violence. For him, it was simply an act of possessing property that he had legally acquired. He did not talk to her, did not ask about her condition, but simply did what he considered his right. When it was over, Mansour got up, got dressed, and left the room without a word. Amina remained lying on the bed, trembling from shock and humiliation. She did not cry. Her tears had ended somewhere around the time the plane took off from Kerala. Now she just lay there and stared at the ceiling, trying to understand how her life had turned into this. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. Mansour continued to go to work, come home in the evening, and sometimes visit Amina at night. They hardly spoke. The girl spent her days at home, sometimes going out into the garden, trying to read the books she had brought with her, but unable to concentrate. Maria tried to cheer her up, cooking her favorite dishes and trying to get her to talk, but Amina remained withdrawn and silent. Her only connection to her former life was her phone. Every day, Amina called her mother and told her that everything was fine, that her husband provided well for her, that the house was beautiful, that she was getting used to it. She lied easily and naturally because she couldn't tell the truth. She couldn't explain to her mother, who was so happy about this marriage, that her daughter was unhappy, that she felt like a thing that had been bought and paid for, that every day here seemed like an eternity to her. Her mother, for her part, was delighted. She told her neighbors and relatives what a nice house her son-in-law had, how much money he gave Amina, what a stroke of luck it was for their family. Her younger sisters envied their older sister and dreamed of also marrying a rich man from Dubai. Her father remained silent, but in the evenings he often looked at a photograph of his daughter, which stood in a frame on the shelf. A week after the wedding, Mansour showed his dissatisfaction for the first time. One evening, he came home from work earlier than usual, called Amina into the living room, and said that he did not like the way she was behaving, that she was too quiet, too withdrawn, that a good wife should be more open and cheerful, that he had paid good money for her and expected her to behave accordingly. Amina tried to explain that it was difficult for her to get used to her new life, that she needed time. Mansour listened to her and said that she hadn't had enough time, that she should have prepared for this marriage in advance. Then he added that he would check whether she was worthy of being his wife, that if he found out that she had been deceived, that she did not live up to what the agency had promised, she would regret it. These words frightened Amina. She did not understand what Mansour meant, but there was a threat in his voice. He did not come to her that night, nor the next 2 nights. He avoided her, hardly ever appeared at home, left early in the morning and returned late at night, immediately going to his room. Maria noticed the changes in her employer's behavior. She had known Mansour for many years and had seen him in different states of mind. After his divorce from his first wife, he had been gloomy and irritable for a long time. Then he calmed down and became more reserved. But in recent days, he had been nervous again, often talking on the phone and raising his voice. Several times, the maid heard him yelling at someone on the phone in Arabic. She didn't understand all the words, but she got the general idea. Mansour was angry, demanding answers from someone, accusing them of cheating. One morning, when Mansour left for work, Amina heard Maria talking to the security guard in the kitchen. They were speaking in English, and the girl couldn't help but overhear their conversation. Maria said that the owner had called some agency the night before, swearing, demanding his money back, saying he had been cheated. The security guard asked what was going on, and Maria replied that she didn't know for sure, but it seemed that the owner was dissatisfied with his new wife, that he suspected that he had been given the wrong girl, not the one he had been promised. Amina felt cold at these words. She returned to her room and tried to remember all the details of the marriage, the medical certificate she had received at the clinic, the documents her parents had signed, the conditions specified in the marriage contract. And then she remembered. The agency had stated in the documents that she was a virgin. That was one of the groom's main requirements. But Amina was not a virgin. 2 years ago, when she was 19, she had a brief relationship with a classmate. It lasted only a few months. Then the young man transferred to another college and they broke up. Amina didn't tell anyone about it, not even her friends. In their conservative society, premarital relationships were taboo. If her parents found out, it would be a disgrace to the whole family. When Amina underwent a medical examination before the wedding, the doctor asked her a few formal questions and issued a certificate. There was no real examination. The girl assumed that this might be discovered on her wedding night, but hoped that Mansour would not pay attention to it or attach any importance to it. Many modern men did not attach importance to such things, but Mansour, as it turned out, was not one of them. Now Amina realized she was in danger. If Mansour really believed he had been deceived, He could do anything. The UAE had strict laws, but for foreign wives without connections or money, there was virtually no protection. She was in the country on a visa that her husband had arranged. Her passport was in his safe. She had almost no money, only the small amount her father had given her. She had nowhere to go. Amina tried to call her mother, but she did not understand the seriousness of the situation. Her mother said that all brides go through difficulties in the first weeks of marriage, that she needed to be patient and obedient, and that her husband would surely appreciate her in time. She did not hear the panic in her daughter's voice, did not understand that she was asking for help. On the evening of March 18th, Mansour came home later than usual. Amina heard the car door slam, heard him climb the stairs heavily, heard him go into his study and close the door. After a while, he called Maria and told her to prepare dinner for two. The maid was surprised. Mansour usually dined alone, but she silently obeyed the order. When dinner was ready, Mansour called Amina to the dining room. The girl went downstairs, feeling her heart pounding in her chest. They sat down at the table opposite each other. Maria served the food and went to the kitchen. Mansour began to eat in silence, not looking at his wife. Amina did not touch her plate. After a few minutes, he put down his fork, leaned back in his chair, and looked at her. His gaze was cold and harsh. He said that he had called the agency that had arranged their marriage, that he had demanded an explanation, that he had been told that all the documents were in order, all the conditions had been met, and the claims were unfounded. He paused, then added that he didn't believe the agency, that he wanted to hear the truth from Amina herself. The girl was silent. She didn't know what to say. If she lied, he could check it. If she told the truth, the consequences could be terrible. Mansour repeated the question, this time louder and harsher. Amina lowered her eyes and quietly admitted that she was not a virgin before marriage, that she had had a relationship with a young man 2 years ago, that she did not know it was so important to him, that the agency had issued a certificate without a real examination. Mansour listened silently. His face showed no emotion, but his hands were clenched into fists. When Amina finished speaking, he slowly got up from the table. He stood motionless for a few seconds, then turned and left the dining room. The girl heard him go upstairs and slam the door to his office. Then there was silence. Amina sat at the table, unable to move. Maria looked out from the kitchen and saw her frozen daughter-in-law and the untouched dinner. She approached and quietly asked if everything was all right. Amina did not answer. The maid helped her up and accompanied her to her bedroom. As she left, she whispered that the girl should lock the door for the night. There was alarm in her voice. Amina did not sleep that night. She lay on the bed fully clothed, listening to every sound in the house. Something banged downstairs. Footsteps were heard, then silence again. The clock on the wall counted down the minutes. 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. It was beginning to get light outside. Nothing happened. In the morning, Mansour left for work as usual. He didn't go to his wife, didn't say a word. Amina spent the day in her room, not even coming out to eat. Maria brought her food, but the girl didn't touch her plate. She sat by the window all day, looking at the street, trying to figure out what to do next, but there was no way out. On the evening of March 19th, everything changed for good. When Mansour returned home, he was a different person. His face was calm, almost peaceful. He had dinner, watched TV, then went upstairs. Around 11 p.m., he knocked on Amina's door. The girl opened the door. Mansour stood on the threshold in his home clothes, his face calm, almost indifferent. He asked if he could come in. Amina nodded and stepped aside. Mansour closed the door behind him and sat down on the edge of the bed. He was silent for a few minutes, looking around the room as if he were seeing it for the first time. Then he spoke. He said he had been thinking all night. and all day. That he understood she was young, that she had had her own life before him, that perhaps he had overreacted. His voice was even, almost soft. Amina felt the tension ease a little. Maybe everything would be all right. Maybe he would forgive her. Mansour got out of bed and went to the window. He stood there, looking at Dubai at night through the glass. Then he turned to Amina and asked if she had loved that guy. The girl didn't know how to answer. She mumbled something indistinct about youthful foolishness, about how it was a long time ago, and didn't mean anything. Mansour nodded as if he didn't care. Then he asked if she understood that she had disgraced him. There was a new tone in his voice. Not a shout, not anger, but something cold and harsh. He said he had paid good money for her, that he had a right to get what he had been promised, that he had been deceived, and deception was an unforgivable insult in their culture. Amina tried to say something in her defense, but he cut her off with a sharp gesture. Mansour took a step toward her. Amina instinctively stepped back. He asked if she knew what he could do to her for this deception. That under Sharia law, a husband had rights she couldn't even imagine. The girl felt a chill run down her spine. She whispered that she was sorry, that she didn't want to deceive anyone, that the agency had issued the certificate without her knowledge. What happened next happened very quickly. Mansour grabbed her by the shoulders, tightly, painfully. Amina screamed and tried to break free, but he was much stronger. He pinned her against the wall and hissed in her face that she had disgraced him in front of his family, the agency, and himself. That he would not allow some girl from a poor Indian village to make a fool of him. Amina tried to push him away, hitting his chest with her hands. This only made him angrier. Mansour slapped her across the face with his open palm. The blow was hard, and the girl felt the metallic taste of blood in her mouth. She screamed, but Mansour covered her mouth with his hand. Then he dragged her to the bed. The next few minutes were a nightmare. Mansour beat her, choked her, and yelled at her in Arabic. Amina tried to defend herself, scratching his hands and trying to bite him, but the strength was unequal. At one point, he wrapped both hands around her neck and began to squeeze. The girl tried to breathe, but no air came in. She scratched his hands, tried to push him away, but with every second her strength was fading. Black circles floated before her eyes. The last thing she saw was Mansour's face, contorted with rage, above her. When he let go of her neck, Amina fell lifelessly onto the bed. Mansour stood over her for a few seconds, breathing heavily. Then he leaned over and checked her pulse. Nothing. He took a step back, looked at his hands, at the girl's motionless body on the bed. His face was impassive. No remorse, no shock, only cold calculation. He left the room and went down to his office. There he sat for about an hour, thinking about the situation. Then he picked up the phone and called the private security company he worked with. He explained that there had been an accident, that his wife had fallen and hit her head. He needed help. The person on the other end of the line advised him to call the police and an ambulance immediately. Mansour thanked him and hung up. He went back up to the bedroom. He looked around the room. There were signs of a struggle on the sheets. The pillows were on the floor, and one of the bedside tables had been moved. Mansour tried to make it look like an accident. He turned the nightstand on its side and laid Amina down as if she had fallen and hit her head on the corner. Then he noticed scratches on his hands and neck, traces of her resistance. He went to the bathroom, washed the scratches, and changed into clean clothes. He put the blood-stained robe in a bag and hid it in the far corner of the dressing room. Around midnight, he went downstairs and woke up the security guard. He said that something had happened to his wife, that she had fallen and was unconscious. He ordered the guard to call the police. The guard, a Filipino named Ramon, had only been working in the house for 2 months and did not dare to argue with his employer. He dialed the emergency number and reported the incident. The patrol arrived 15 minutes later. 2 Dubai police officers went up to the bedroom. One of them immediately realized that the girl was dead. He called for backup and forensic experts. The second officer stayed downstairs with Mansour, asking him questions. Mansour calmly told his version of events. They had quarreled over a trivial matter. His wife had become upset, started pacing the room, slipped, and hit her head on the corner of the nightstand. He tried to help her, but she was already not breathing. The officer recorded the testimony without expressing any doubt or sympathy. In Dubai, the police were used to such calls. Domestic conflicts, accidents, sometimes something more serious. But protocol is protocol. They had to wait for the forensic experts and the pathologist. An hour later, the investigation team arrived. The senior investigator, Major Khalid Al-Shamsi, had been working in the homicide department for 23 years. He had seen it all. When he went up to the bedroom and examined the scene, his experience told him that this was not a simple case. The position of the body was not consistent with a fall. The marks on the neck indicated violence. The disorder in the room looked staged. The forensic investigators began their work. They photographed the scene from different angles. They took measurements. They collected samples from the sheet, the carpet, and the nightstand. They examined the body. The pathologist who arrived with the investigation team conducted a preliminary examination right there at the scene. He immediately noted that the marks on the neck did not correspond to blows with a blunt object. They were finger marks, strong, prolonged pressure. The girl also had abrasions on her hands, as if she had been defending herself. There was a bruise on her face from a blow. Major Al-Shamsi went downstairs and questioned Mansour again. This time the questions were tougher. How exactly did the quarrel happen? What was it about? Were there any previous conflicts? Why were there finger marks on his wife's neck if she fell on the nightstand? Mansour did not lose his composure. He explained that he had tried to perform CPR and may have pressed too hard, that he was in a panic and did not remember all the details, that he was not guilty of anything. The investigator ordered Mansour to be taken to the station to give an official statement. He also ordered that everyone who had been in the house that evening be questioned. Maria was woken up in the middle of the night, frightened and confused. She told everything she knew, that she heard screams from the bedroom around 11 p.m., that she wanted to go upstairs to check, but was afraid, that then there was a sound of a blow, followed by silence, that around midnight, the owner came downstairs and told the security guard to call the police. The security guard, Ramon, also gave a statement. He confirmed that Mansour called him around midnight and said that his wife had fallen, that he seemed calm, even too calm for someone whose wife had just been injured. He noticed scratches on the owner's hands when he handed him the phone to call the police. Amina's body was taken to the morgue for a full autopsy. The examination took 2 days. The conclusion was clear. Death was caused by strangulation with hands. The time of death was between 11 p.m. and midnight on March 19th. There were multiple injuries on the body, bruises on the arms, abrasions on the wrists, a mark from a blow to the left cheek, and finger marks on the neck. All injuries were sustained shortly before death. There were no signs of alcohol or drugs in the blood, no chronic diseases that could have led to sudden death. Expert conclusion: violent death as a result of asphyxiation from compression of the neck. Forensic experts examined the entire house. In the bedroom closet, they found a plastic bag hidden in the corner with a blood-stained robe inside. The examination confirmed that it was Amina's blood. Fibers from her clothing and skin cells were also found on the robe. DNA analysis showed that the robe belonged to Mansour. The video surveillance system in the house was checked. There were cameras at the entrance, in the first-floor hallway, and in the garden. There were no cameras on the second floor, but the recordings showed that at around 9 p.m. on March 19th, Mansour went up to the second floor. Then, at 10:50 p.m., the surveillance system in the hallway was turned off. Experts determined that it was turned off manually from a remote control located in the owner's office. The camera was turned back on only at 11:40 p.m. after Amina's death. The recording shows Mansour going downstairs, entering his office, leaving a few minutes later, and going to the bathroom. Then he goes back upstairs. Investigators seized Mansour's phone and Amina's phone. An examination of the mobile devices showed that in the last days before her death, Amina had tried several times to contact her mother, writing long messages that she then deleted without sending. Data recovery made it possible to read these drafts. In them, the girl wrote that she was afraid, that her husband was threatening her, that she did not know what to do. In the last unsent message, written on the morning of March 19th, she wrote, "Mom, if something happens to me, know that I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't be a good daughter." Mansour's phone contained correspondence with a representative of the marriage agency. On March 17th, he wrote, "You deceived me. She is not a virgin. I demand my money back." The agency replied that all the documents were in order and that the claims were unfounded. On March 18th, Mansour wrote to another contact, a man named Youssef. "If she is not pure, I will destroy her. No one will make a fool of me." This message became key evidence of premeditation. On March 21st, 2 days after Amina's death, Mansour bin Hamad al-Mazrouei was officially arrested on suspicion of murder. He was taken to a detention center in Dubai. During questioning, he continued to insist on his version of an accident, but the evidence spoke against him. His lawyer, an experienced criminal specialist, advised him to change his defense strategy and admit to a conflict, but not to intentional murder, to claim that the death was accidental in the heat of an argument. Information about the case leaked to the local media. Several Arab newspapers published short notes about the death of a young Indian woman in the home of a wealthy businessman. No names were mentioned, but the details were recognizable. A discussion began in the Indian community in Dubai. Some sympathized with the girl's family, while others said she was to blame for cheating on her husband. Traditional views on premarital virginity were strong in both Arab and Indian cultures. Amina's parents learned of their daughter's death from a call from a representative of the Indian consulate in Dubai. Her mother fainted, and her father was taken to the hospital with a heart attack. Her younger sisters wept, unable to comprehend how their older sister, who had hugged them goodbye just 10 days earlier, was now dead. The consulate helped with the paperwork for repatriating the body. The Indian government covered the transportation costs. Amina's body was brought to Kerala on March 26th. The funeral was quiet, without unnecessary attention. Her parents did not want publicity. Neighbors and relatives whispered, discussing the circumstances of her death, gossiping that the girl was not a virgin and that her husband had killed her because of that. Some said that she was to blame, that she had disgraced the family. Others sympathized with her parents, saying that marriage agencies deceive people, that young girls should not be given to old men. In Dubai, the investigation continued. Major al-Shamsi pieced together the full picture of what had happened. Mansour found out that Amina was not a virgin either on their wedding night or a few days later. This enraged him. He felt that he had been deceived, that he had paid for a product that did not match the description. For several days, he thought about what to do. He called the agency and demanded an explanation, but they refused to return his money. His anger grew. On March 19th, he made a decision. That evening, he went to Amina and questioned her. The girl confessed to her past relationship. That was the last straw. Mansour lost control and killed her. Perhaps initially he only wanted to punish her, to scare her, but he went too far. Or perhaps the murder was a conscious decision. His correspondence with Youssef, in which he wrote, "I will destroy her," suggested the latter. The investigation also established that Mansour had a history of aggressive behavior. His first wife filed for divorce due to domestic violence, although the official reason for the divorce was irreconcilable differences. Several maids who had previously worked in his house quit because of his abusive treatment. One of his former business partners said that Mansour had a quick temper and could be dangerous when angry. The Dubai Public Prosecutor's Office decided to refer the case to court. The charge: premeditated murder with aggravating circumstances. Under UAE law, intentional murder is punishable by death or life imprisonment. Aggravating circumstances: the victim was the defendant's wife, was under his authority and protection, and the murder took place in the home, where she should have felt safe. The trial began in June 2024. The trial was held in the Dubai Criminal Court. The hearings were closed to the press at the request of the defendant's family. Mansour was defended by a team of 3 lawyers who tried to prove that the death was the result of an unintentional quarrel, that their client did not plan the murder, and that he acted in the heat of the moment. The prosecution was represented by the Public Prosecutor's Office. The prosecutor, an experienced lawyer with 20 years of experience, built a clear case for the prosecution. He presented all the evidence gathered to the court: the pathologist's report, forensic evidence, witness statements, and correspondence from the defendant's phone. Particular attention was paid to a message in which Mansour wrote, "I will destroy her." According to the prosecutor, this proved premeditation. The defense tried to discredit the evidence. They claimed that the correspondence had been taken out of context, that the phrase, "I will destroy her," was an emotional statement, not a plan of action, that the shutdown of the surveillance cameras was an accidental technical malfunction, that the scratches on Mansour's hands appeared when he tried to give his wife artificial respiration, that death was the result of an accident during the conflict. The court heard Maria's testimony. The maid recounted in detail what she heard that night: screams, blows, then silence. She admitted that she was afraid of her employer, that he was often rude to the staff, and that there was an atmosphere of fear in the house. The defense tried to portray her testimony as unreliable, claiming that the maid could have confused something or made it up out of revenge against her former employer. Security guard Ramon also testified. He confirmed that he had seen scratches on Mansour's hands and that the employer had been unusually calm when reporting the incident, that it did not seem like the behavior of a man who had just lost his wife in an accident. The court heard from forensic experts. They explained in detail that the marks on Amina's neck could not have been caused by attempts at resuscitation. They were marks of violent strangulation that lasted at least 3 minutes. The victim actively resisted, as evidenced by the abrasions on her hands and the scratches on the attacker's hands. DNA analysis confirmed that the blood-stained robe found in the dressing room belonged to Mansour, and that the blood on it was Amina's. The defense was unable to explain why he hid the robe if the death was accidental. The prosecutor called in a domestic violence specialist from the Dubai Victim Support Center. The expert explained to the court that such cases are, unfortunately, not uncommon. Young brides from poor countries in South Asia often become victims of violence at the hands of older, wealthy husbands from Arab countries. Cultural differences, language barriers, isolation, and dependence on their husbands make them particularly vulnerable. Many do not seek help because of fear of deportation or pressure from their families. The defense objected, arguing that the expert was bringing bias and stereotypes to the case, that their client did not fit the description of a typical domestic tyrant, that he was a respected businessman, father of 2 children, who had never previously been charged with a crime. But the prosecutor presented information about Mansour's previous marriage. He called his first wife as a witness. The woman reluctantly recounted years of marriage filled with humiliation and physical abuse. She described how she feared her husband and how she had been hospitalized several times with injuries that she explained away as falls and clumsiness. She said that the divorce had been a salvation for her. This testimony seriously undermined the defense's case. The trial lasted 3 months. During this time, 14 hearings were held, 23 witnesses were heard, and dozens of expert reports and documents were presented. The public did not have access to the trial, but the Indian community in Dubai followed developments through unofficial channels. Many hoped for a fair verdict. On September 21, 2024, the court announced its verdict. Mansour bin Hamad al-Mazrouei was found guilty of the premeditated murder of his wife under aggravating circumstances. The court found that the defendant acted deliberately, that he planned to punish his wife for her past, and that the murder was the result of cold calculation rather than passion. The evidence included correspondence in which he threatened to kill his wife, the disabling of CCTV cameras before the crime, attempts to stage an accident, and the concealment of evidence. The sentence: 25 years imprisonment without the right to early release. The court also ordered the convicted man to pay Amina's family compensation of 500,000 dirhams, which is approximately $136,000. According to Islamic law, this amount is called diya, blood money paid to the family of the murdered person. The defense appealed, but the appeals court upheld the sentence. Mansour was transferred to a maximum security prison in Dubai, where he was to serve his sentence. Amina's family received compensation, but the money could not bring their daughter back. Her mother fell into a deep depression, and her father never recovered from his heart attack and became disabled. Her younger sisters continued their studies, but the shadow of their older sister's tragedy fell over the entire family. Neighbors still whispered behind their backs, discussing the shame Amina had brought on the family. The marriage agency that arranged the marriage continued to operate. The owner, Rashid Hussein, was questioned by investigators, but no criminal case was brought against him. Formally, the agency did not violate any laws and provided all the necessary documents. The clinic that issued the fake virginity certificate received a warning from the medical authorities, but continued its practice. Amina Paraman's story is yet another tragic example of how cultural traditions, inequality, and violence can lead to the destruction of a young life. A girl who, just a few weeks ago, dreamed of a future, of education, of a normal life, became a victim of a system that treated women as commodities to be bought and sold. In Dubai, a city of skyscrapers and luxury, many similar stories are hidden behind the glittering facades. Stories of domestic workers who are beaten by their employers. Stories of young brides from poor countries who find themselves trapped in violent marriages. Stories of those who are deprived of a voice and protection.